For decades, every serious rider trusted 2 chain rings to survive a mountain climb, and the front derailleur was untouchable. Then one design tried to kill it completely. 10-speed cassettes stretched past 50 teeth, single rings replaced doubles overnight, and gravel bikes ran road doubles off-road. This video breaks down why one system won on some courses and lost on others. So which drivetrain deserves your money? Stick around for the discipline that still runs too. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Let's start where it all began. By the early 1980s, the front derailleur was not optional. It was the entire point of a serious bike. Riders needed a wide spread of gears to handle steep climbs, flat sprints, and everything between, and no single chainring could cover that range without huge, unusable jumps between gears. The answer was mechanical brute force. 2 or 3 chain rings up front, paired with a 5, 6, or 7-speed cluster out back, shifted by a derailer cage that swung the chain sideways under tension. Road bikes standardized around 5242 or 5339 tooth doubles, while early mountain bikes ran triples as wide as 463624, giving riders a total range that could stretch past 400%. Index shifting, introduced by Shimano in the mid-1980s, made that complexity easier to live with, turning a vague friction lever into a precise click for every gear, which is part of why multi-ring systems became even more entrenched instead of fading out. It worked, and it worked well enough that nobody seriously questioned the format for almost 3 decades. Every professional peloton, every mountain bike race series, every catalog from Campagnolo, Suntour, and Shimano ran the same basic architecture, and touring riders leaned on triples even harder, since loaded bikes needed the lowest possible gear for climbing with gear on board. Owning more gears became a status symbol on its own. A 21-speed bike sold better than a 10-speed, even when most riders never touched half the combinations, and shops rarely questioned why a casual rider needed 3 rings instead of 1. But that complexity came with a cost that nobody fully priced in until mountain biking got faster, rougher, and far less forgiving of anything mechanical hanging off the side of the frame, which is exactly where the cracks started to show. As cross-country and downhill racing pushed into rockier, muddier terrain through the 1990s and 2000s, the front derailleur became the weakest link in the entire bike. A derailleur cage sitting low near the chain rings caught mud packed with debris on wet courses and occasionally bent or snapped outright on a hard impact, ending a race in seconds rather than minutes. Chain drops were constant. Without a wide, stiff chain ring and a properly tensioned system, the chain could jump off the front ring entirely on rough descents, something that happened often enough that riders taped chain guides onto their frames just to manage it before purpose-built guides even existed. Cable-actuated front shifting also suffered in cold, wet conditions far more than rear shifting did. Since the cable run to the front derailleur was longer and more exposed, and a stretched or contaminated cable could throw the whole system out of alignment mid-race. Add up the shifters, the front derailleur, the extra chain rings, and the cabling required to run it all, and a double or triple setup could add close to a full pound of rotating and mechanical weight compared to a single ring system. Weight that mattered enormously once bikes started being raced downhill at speed over jumps and rock gardens. Riders and mechanics both knew the front shift was the least reliable part of the drivetrain, the one most likely to fail under pressure, and the one that demanded the most maintenance to keep clean and correctly indexed race after race. Multiple component makers experimented with chain guides, bash guards, and narrower cage designs through the 2000s, trying to patch the problem without solving it. And none of those fixes addressed the root issue. The front derailleur itself was fighting against terrain mountain biking had already evolved past. That tension eventually pushed one company to try something nobody had seriously attempted before, removing the front derailleur altogether and betting the entire gear range could live on one ring. Sram's gamble. In 2012, Sram launched XX1, the first drivetrain built from the ground up with no front derailleur at all. The core innovation was a chainring with alternating narrow and wide teeth, a profile called X-Sync, engineered so each tooth matched the width of either the inner or outer chain plate, exactly as the chain wrapped around it. That precise fit held the chain in place mechanically, without a chain guide or a second ring to keep it centered, even over rock gardens and hard landings that would have dropped a conventional chain instantly. Sram paired the chain ring with a rear derailleur built around a clutch mechanism, adding constant spring tension to the chain to stop it slapping and derailing on rough trail, a problem that had quietly plagued rear shifting for years, even on double and triple systems. To make up for losing the front gears, the rear cassette expanded to a single 10 to 42 tooth, 11-speed cluster, delivering a 420% total range, close to what a double chainring setup had offered, but from one ring and one shifter instead of two of each. The system launched at a steep price and drew real skepticism from longtime racers who assumed losing a chainring meant losing usable range on steep climbs, a doubt that only faded once results started coming in. Within a single race season, downhill and cross-country teams on the World Cup circuit began switching over, and independent testing consistently showed weight savings in the 200 to 300 gram range once the front derailleur, second chainring, and matching shifter were removed entirely. For a discipline where every gram and every mechanical failure point mattered, that trade was easy to justify. A single ring and a single shifter also meant one less thing to think about mid-race, which mattered as much to riders as the weight did. It changed how a bike looked and how it was marketed almost overnight, but SRAM still needed to prove it held up outside a controlled test, which is exactly where the next 2 seasons of racing came in. Proof on the World Cup circuit. The real test came in competition, not in a lab. Enduro racing, a discipline built entirely around unpredictable, technical descents strung together by punishing climbing stages, adopted single-ring drivetrains faster than almost any other category in the sport. And by the mid-2010s, it was difficult to find a top-level enduro racer still running 2 chain rings. Cross-country racing followed a similar pattern, with most major manufacturers offering only single-ring options on their flagship race bikes within a few years of XX1's release, and by the 2016 season, a double chainring at the top of the World Cup XC field had become the exception rather than the norm. Sales data across the mountain bike industry backed up what was happening on race courses. Aftermarket single-ring conversion kits became one of the fastest-growing categories in the drivetrain market, as riders retrofitted older double and triple bikes rather than wait for a full upgrade cycle. Mechanics reported far fewer chain drop-related retirements once teams switched over, and fewer components meant fewer things breaking mid-stage, which is difficult to argue with when a single mechanical failure can end a season's worth of championship points in one run. The look of a bike changed too. A clean cockpit with 1 shifter and 1 ring became shorthand for a serious, modern build, while 2 rings started to read as outdated even on bikes where a double still made technical sense for the terrain. That cultural shift moved faster than the underlying technology itself in some corners of the sport, with casual trail riders switching over years before their local terrain actually demanded it. But not every discipline followed the same path, and the riders who stayed loyal to 2 chain rings had a real argument. one built on math that single-ring systems still hadn't fully solved. The cadence problem. Removing a chainring doesn't remove the need for gear range. It just concentrates that entire range into a single, much larger cassette. And that concentration comes with a mathematical cost. Every jump between gears on a single-ring cassette is proportionally bigger than the same jump would be on a double, because there are fewer total steps covering the same overall spread. And on some early single-ring cassettes, the jump between the two largest cogs could exceed a 20% change in gear ratio in one click. A rider spinning a comfortable cadence on one gear can find the next gear noticeably harder or easier, forcing a cadence spike or drop. Instead of the smooth, incremental change, a double chainring naturally provides across a much finer set of steps. On long road climbs and steady gravel efforts, where holding a consistent cadence for an hour or more directly affects fatigue and power output, that gap matters far more than it does on a 5-minute downhill stage, where raw power output changes constantly anyway. Road cyclists and gravel racers, many of whom spend hours in a narrow, steady power zone rather than shifting constantly between extremes, pointed to this as the reason doubles never disappeared from their side of the sport, no matter how dominant single rings became in mountain biking. A double chainring, even a modest one, effectively doubles the number of available gear steps across the same overall range, letting a rider fine-tune cadence in a way a single ring mathematically cannot replicate without sacrificing top-end or bottom-end range elsewhere. That argument didn't stop the single-ring movement, but it did draw a hard line between disciplines built around bursts of technical terrain and disciplines built around long, sustained, steady effort. It also put pressure back on the component makers to prove that two rings could still evolve rather than simply be left behind as a relic. And that response arrived faster than most riders expected. The response, bigger and smarter. Rather than concede the argument, both major drivetrain makers pushed double chainrings forward instead of abandoning them. Shimano expanded its road and gravel lineups with wider range cassettes, eventually offering options up to 34 teeth on the largest cog paired with compact 4831 or similar subcompact doubles, closing much of the gap that used to force riders toward a triple just to survive a steep gradient. Electronic shifting, refined through Shimano's Di2 system and Sram's own wireless group sets, solved the mechanical reliability problem that single-ring advocates had used as their strongest point against doubles. A front derailer, controlled by a motor and a chip, shifts with a level of precision and consistency that a cable-actuated system never matched, virtually eliminating dropped chains and mistimed shifts under load, even in cold or wet conditions that used to guarantee at least one bad shift per ride. On the mountain bike side, single-ring cassettes kept growing too, with SRAM's Eagle Group sets pushing range past 500% using a 10 to 52 tooth spread, narrowing the gap that once made a double necessary for extreme terrain and blurring the line between what each system could technically offer. Wireless shifting also opened up hybrid setups riders had never been able to build before, mixing a mountain bike cassette with road shifters in what became known as a mullet drivetrain, giving gravel riders single-ring simplicity without giving up quite as much range as early single-ring cassettes had cost them. The result wasn't a clear winner. It was two systems converging from opposite directions, each borrowing the other's strengths: wider range for single rings, smarter, more reliable shifting for doubles. Gravel bikes became the clearest battleground for this convergence, with manufacturers offering both configurations on the same frame, depending on whether a rider valued outright range or fine-tuned cadence control more. That split, rather than a single system dominating everywhere, is what actually defines the sport today, and it comes down almost entirely to what kind of terrain and effort a rider is built around. Where each one wins, the honest answer to the 1x versus 2x debate isn't a single winner, it's a map of disciplines. Enduro and downhill racing remain almost entirely single-ring territory, where mud clearance, weight, and mechanical simplicity on technical descents outweigh any cadence penalty, since races are decided in minutes of chaos, not hours of steady pedaling. Cross-country racing sits closer to a genuine split, with some riders preferring a single-ring simplicity and others returning to a double for the sustained climbing stages that now define modern short-track and marathon formats. Road racing and long-distance gravel events remain double chainring strongholds almost everywhere because hours of steady effort reward fine cadence control far more than they reward shaving off one shifter and a few hundred grams. Bike packing and ultra-distance gravel present the strongest case for doubles of all, since riders are managing fatigue across multi-day efforts, where every unnecessary cadence spike compounds over hundreds of kilometers rather than a single afternoon. Electric mountain bikes complicate the picture further, since a motor supplying torque on demand reduces how much a rider depends on a wide mechanical range in the first place, which is part of why many EMTBs run tighter, simpler single-ring setups than an equivalent analog bike would need. Even within a single discipline, terrain overrides the general trend. A rider based in flat, steady terrain leans toward range and simplicity, while a rider constantly hitting steep, punchy climbs leans back toward a double, no matter what their race category technically calls for. What started as a binary argument, one system replacing the other, has settled into something closer to a toolkit, where the right drivetrain depends entirely on what a rider is actually doing with it, not on which one dominated the marketing conversation that year. Riders actually live by walk into any bike shop today, and the choice isn't framed as old versus new anymore. It's framed as a question about riding style. Riders who value a clean, simple setup and technical, punchy terrain gravitate toward one ring without a second thought because the mechanical case for it, less weight, fewer failure points, a wider cassette that keeps improving every model year, remains genuinely strong. Riders logging long, steady miles, whether on the road, on gravel, or across multi-day routes, keep coming back to two rings, not out of nostalgia, but because the cadence math still favors them for that kind of effort. Cost plays a role too. A wide-range single-ring cassette at the top of a lineup can cost more than an entire double group set once paired with a matching clutch derailleur, which pushes some budget-conscious riders back toward a double simply on price rather than performance. The bikes people actually buy reflect that split more honestly than any single review ever could. Flagship enduro bikes ship single-ring almost without exception, while endurance road and adventure gravel bikes still default to a double far more often than marketing trends would suggest. That's the real lesson. Underneath the debate, drivetrain choice was never actually about which system was objectively better. It was about matching the tool to the terrain and the type of effort a rider spends the most time doing. From two chain rings holding on as the only serious option, to Sram's single-ring gamble reshaping an entire category of racing, to double chain rings clawing back relevance through smarter cassettes and electronic precision. This has never really been a story about one system beating another. It's a story about engineering constantly chasing the terrain riders actually face, and about how quickly an entire industry's default assumption can flip once one company is willing to bet against it. If you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribe. The next deep dive might settle a debate you're having with your own riding buddies right now. Which side of this are you on? One ring or two? Let us know below.